Today, I am joined by Chloe Melas Mazza, an entertainment reporter for CNN who covers all things entertainment and Hollywood for the network across all their platforms. Chloe's reporting ranges from breaking news and exclusive feature interviews to industry analysis of every corner of the entertainment industry. I think she might have dug in some of the corners of Caitlin and I once or twice, but all good stuff. In addition to spending her days researching and investigating news stories around the world, Chloe has more recently taken on a new project in sharing her grandfather's World War II memoir with the world by writing the foreword for the book titled Luck of the Draw, which comes out next week and will be featured on Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg's Apple series Masters of the Air. Today, we're going to do all things. We're going to dive into the whole idea of the industry of journalism, how much you can make, how you get in the scene. What do an audition process look like in that world? And then we're going to break into this book that Chloe has literally put so much time, effort, sweat, and blood into. Chloe, thank you so much for being here today on Trading Secrets.
That was so epic.
You fired up right now?
I feel like I did like 10 push-ups, right?
Let's
or something.
go.
That was awesome. I can't even do one push-up, but that was really cool.
And on top of it, for everyone out there, Money Mafia, not only do we have Chloe, this is the first time ever we have the Curious Canadian with us, who only does our recaps, but he's here live, and he's here live. If I'm giving you the truth, we're going to celebrate his bachelor party. That's a new thing, bachelor party.
I think we might have made it up, but I'm here for it, and I'm
Wait,
here
what
for
is
this
that?
interview.
Explain
it's
what
like
it is.
my wife is due May 2nd for our first child,
Oh,
and so
congratulations.
the boys wanted to make sure that I got one last kick of the can. So after a couple podcast interviews, which we're really looking forward to, we're heading up to Foxwoods Casino for
Just
48
don't do
hours.
anything stupid.
No,
Yeah. The good
except
news
for
is
gamble
it's-
away some money. That's all we have planned.
Gamble
Don't
couples.
gamble away your child's college fund.
Yes.
this
Yeah.
weekend.
Note to self: don't do that.
Literally,
Okay.
this is a finance podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I love it. Well, David, thank you for being here. The curiosity still stays strong. Whenever you have questions, you just jump in.
That's what I'm here for.
All right, Chloe, we're going to come in hot. Journalism, right? I've always wondered, ever since I was like a kid, I see even just like local news, regional news, national news, international news. You see these hosts from Good Morning America to my local Buffalo 7 channel news, anchor positions. And I'm just curious, like, the discrepancy in pay and the variability from the Buffalo Channel 7 news anchor to, Robin Robbins on Good Morning America is so massive, but I don't know at all on average what people are paid in this industry. What are journalists and on-air media coverage individuals paid, would you say?
I have thought about this a lot because my parents were like, pursue your passions, right? My brother pursued violin. He actually got a degree in violin. What does that even
Wow.
mean exactly? I know. But he ended up getting like a PhD in music. And me, I just was terrible at math
Yeah.
and terrible at just school in general, but I could talk and I could write and I liked to interview people. So I pursued journalism. I never really thought about salaries, what you make, and had my parents said, you're probably not going to make a lot of money in this industry, I might have tried to have become maybe a lawyer or something else like that. Look, first of all, if you get at the top of your game, even like a local industry,
Yeah.
especially in like a top market, like a top tier market, like a New York or Atlanta or a Dallas or an LA or something like that, you could make several $100,000 or more, right?
Okay.
But if you're talking like the top tier of like the Andersons and the Christian Amanpours or the Robin Roberts, like you said, these people are making millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
I don't sign their paychecks, but there's a big like middle,
Okay.
right? And so if you are a correspondent for a big network, I work for a big network, but I'm no famous household name. You do well, but I have a 2 household income, right? Like
Sure.
my husband, like if I didn't have my husband's salary, it would be very hard to live in New York, have 2 kids and, live a comfortable life, there is a wide gap there.
Yeah.
And it's hard to make that jump. I don't know really how it's, once you get to a Robin Roberts level or a
Yeah.
Hoda level, right? You don't leave those spots, right?
Yeah.
Like you're kind of like tenured in and you're there for like a while. So it's really hard to break in. But you do see people like yourself or people that have big social followings or like Caitlin or something like that, who actually these days networks really want to hire people with big social followings and they could get jobs as correspondents now at news networks, or they could have a news type show that really like maybe a decade or so ago that really wasn't happening.
That didn't exist. Now, one thing, I have so many questions just based on what you said, but I even think about like a Hoda and that job. Once you get there, you've worked so hard to get there. You're never not working either. Like I think about the times I'm on vacation, or maybe I could wake up a little later because my meeting got pushed. Hoda's on there every single day, every single night. For the people that are working full time, that are making the millions, how many hours do you think they're putting in on a weekly basis?
Okay, it's tough to say, right? Someone like a Hoda or a Gayle King who's getting to the office at, let's just say, 4 a.m. before they're on the air at 6, right? And the longer you've been doing it, I'm sure that you can cut it a little closer than, you know, someone maybe like myself who needs a little bit more time to like prep and shake the jitters off, and I need coffee, right? But even Gayle has shown on Instagram like herself walking into the studio. She has her car and driver and she gets in and she's in her pajamas, and then she goes and she changes, and she has producers and segment producers, and the show's kind of laid out for her, and she's a pro. She's been doing this for decades. Same with Hoda. But then a lot of times, you know, they're leaving after the show. Perhaps they have meetings, but then you have the whole afternoon and the evening to sort of like have your day, right? Because a lot of these morning anchors are going to bed early, like 7 o'clock. So you don't have like a night life. You don't have a social life. And then you have to like recalibrate for the weekends. I mean, it's, if you read my friend Brian Seltzer's book, Top of the Morning, which is what they used for Apple TV's The Morning Show. I mean, it's a cutthroat industry, but it's also kind of crazy because nobody's sleeping. So everybody's like kind of like losing their minds, right?
That comment right there brings me to the book, one of my favorite
books.
But
in terms of like 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week, I think that as a journalist, you're sort of like always on call. And my friends don't get that, right? Like Priscilla Presley could die at night and it's 7 o'clock and I'm home making dinner for my kids and I'm on. Like
that dinner's
like,
over.
Well,
You're
I mean, like I
cover.
have to like respond to emails, get statements, call the police, go on television maybe, right?
Oh my God,
be on at 6 a.m. the next morning, but means I need to like leave at 3. I've had days where I've worked from 6 a.m. on TV every hour on CNN until like 11 o'clock at night, and then a quick turnaround where I'm up again at 4 a.m. the next day.
My brain is just moving 100 miles an hour. I have like 8,000 questions. Okay, you just touched on the whole idea that
you're not paid by the hour.
You have to. You're not paid by the hour, but you have to stop there for the 7 p.m. You know, there's a huge death. There's something that happens in the news.
I'm sort of like a surgeon. I'm like an on-call. It looks like I have a beeper.
Doctor.
Yeah.
But what is how important is it in your industry that you are there? Like, is every second ticking another like $ or accolade you're missing if you're not covering it right on time?
It's not $signs. It's just that someone's always waiting in the wings. If you're not going to cover that story, somebody else is, right? And they might cover it better than you. So you want to own that story. You want to own that beat, right? Like it might be 7 o'clock. I'm with my kids. Am I allowed to write and say like, sorry, I'm with my kids. I can't. Sure. But like, there's that sort of like unspoken pressures. You've been working for like over a decade for this, and this is what you want, and you work for a big network, and this is a huge national story. You want to own that. You want to be in front of that, right? Because there's somebody else along the way who is going to take your spot. And I know that's sort of like always looking over your shoulder, but I think that you could say that for a lot of industries. Obviously, everybody's different. Everybody has their own strengths that they bring to the table. And, you know, I tell myself like, well, there's nobody who can do it like I can, right? But I mean, also there is probably somebody out there who can do it better than me. But you know, the big question actually that's been going on in my life with my husband and my friends is, and actually, I probably am going to be going to therapy for it, to be honest with you. Is like, I don't know how to turn it off.
Yeah.
And I have 2 little kids. And not to get deep right now, but I think that like a lot of people, you know, when I was interviewing Jeff Bezos recently, it's like, how do you turn it off? Like, do you really take your phone and turn it off at dinner?
Yeah. And does he?
He didn't say, but I don't.
Yeah, I don't.
I check my phone on vacation.
Caitlin is
I get yelled at too.
At that.
And I work in a passion industry too as a hockey coach, and whether it's recruiting or things like that, it's like I was just going to ask, like, has there ever been a situation where you have that anxiety where it's like, I know I should be checking my phone. What if I miss the next story, the next thing that I should be prepped for? But it's date night, or you are trying to make a conscious effort. Have you ever missed like a story, an opportunity, or woken up in the morning and been like, holy shit, how did I miss that?
So no, because
Wow.
I don't know how to turn it off. There
Okay.
was one time that I didn't hear my phone ringing and they called my husband. They woke
Stop
him up
it.
and then he woke me up. He's like, I forget what it was. He was like, oh my God, it was a huge story. He was like, you need to get up. Like, this is a big story. Like, somebody had died or something. He's like, you need to go. And I was like, oh my God, I need to go. And I got dressed and I left. And it was like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
This is fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me too, because one of my favorite books is by Dan Harris, 10% Happier. And he talks about the fact that he was utilizing like massive amount of stimulants to get his big opportunities in this space. He finally gets the big opportunity. He's all coked up and he has a full panic attack
Oh my God.
live on Good Morning America. And he talks about what he did
Oh, wow,
to
I
make
need
his...
to see that.
Oh yeah, he talks
Well, the good
about...
thing is I'm not on drugs. I'm just on a ton of coffee.
Well, I was going to ask you, this is this
but
industry
I
I
have no
don't know
time
anything
for,
about.
So I'm
Do,
sure.
are a lot of your colleagues? Are
No,
they?
I don't think so.
Like, but how are you doing it 24/7?
Well, I don't know, but like all I can do is speak for myself.
Yeah.
No, I don't think anybody's doing drugs. But what I will say is that I don't put myself first. But this isn't like play the violin for me right
Yeah.
now. Like, feel sorry for me. No, don't feel sorry for
No,
me.
it's-
But like, I live with a husband, Brian Mazza. Look him up on Instagram.
Stud,
He-
entrepreneur.
He's been on your show.
Yeah, and he's coming back on. He's unbelievable.
He prioritizes health and wellness, but he makes
Mm-hmm.
money for doing that. He's like, you're not doing anything. Like, you're not hitting the Peloton, which has become a clothes hanger in your office at home. You're not going to the gym, although I belong to a gym. And it's because I'm in this constant, as he calls, fight or flight. Like, I don't know when there's going to be another story. So I'm afraid. I'm sure my boss is listening to this. You're like, Chloe, what's wrong with you? But it's like, I'm afraid because I don't have one particular show to like go to the gym or like go make a big plan to do something unless I actually like take off time and I'm like, I'm at the gym, I'm not available. Because if a story breaks, I can't be sweating on the 35th floor of my building
Cover it.
and then do what? Oh, sorry, I can't go on air because I need to shower. I'm not on a show. I work for a 24/7 news network.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to figure out because, let me explain. I was home for 2 years during the pandemic.
Yeah.
We all worked from home. Now we've all been mandated pretty much like come back to the office, right? If you have an essential job to be on the air,
Of course.
right?
Yep.
They don't want me at home in my office
Right.
on television. And then someone's like, well, why can she work from home if I have to be in the office, right?
Yeah.
So, it's not like it's a mandate at CNN where everybody has to be in every single day. But for my job, I really have to be there. So President's Day was working from home. Right?
Okay, yeah.
And luckily, I was dressed and showered. I
Okay.
looked decent because I had a Zoom that day with Apple
Yep.
talking about my grandfather's show, which I'll tell you all about.
Yep,
Mhm.
that's coming.
Sounds fancy, right? And they're like, oh, new Alec Baldwin news. Can you go on? I'm like, I'm at home. Well, how soon can you get in? Okay, I'll leave right now. And I got in. I had 10 minutes to park, raced in, couldn't find my badge. They
And
like
just
finally got in the
scrambling.
building and I like made it to the set like 3 minutes before. It was fine.
Have you ever had a situation like that
Hated my makeup. But
where you're covering something that's big, that's breaking, or there's high pressure, and similar to Dan Harris, have you ever had like a panic live? And if so, if you haven't, I'm curious for people back home that feel that, whether they're a nurse, they're an accountant, they're a teacher, they have that little panic, but it's not at the stage that that you're on. What advice would you have?
Well, so when it comes to the television element of it, like, sure, I always get nervous and I always have adrenaline. And I think that's just exciting.
Yeah.
And if that went away, maybe that would be concerning if that went away.
Rob Gronkowski was on a couple weeks ago. He said, if his coaches always said before the big
Gronk.
games, the Gronk,
Yeah.
if you're not nervous, you're not ready.
Okay.
My palms
So
are
I-
sweating right now. So
I know.
I'm
Right.
good.
You're
I'm
nervous. I get nervous, but the biggest thing is like if I'm sick or I'm worried I'm gonna like cough on the air
Yeah.
or like have some coughing fit or like I have the flu and I'm worried I'm
Like
gonna
the
like throw up
sniffles or
on
something?
air.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
But no, I mean, I just think that like I'm someone. What's the poor preparation? What's the
Poor prior planning, PPP.
no,
You
but
can't have
it's
poor
it's
prior
like
planning.
piss
Fair.
poor planning. I don't know. My husband says it, but I over prepare.
Over.
I'm
Okay.
ready.
Got it.
And I have like little tricks and things like that, especially when I'm working from home.
Well, give us a
My
trick.
whole computer screen is filled with all my information, all these Word documents, everything, so that like news articles, so that while someone's talking, I have sort of like talking points in front of me, right?
Gotcha.
And I had a coach at CNN. Because, yeah, they hired a coach for me at one point because I have a high-pitched voice and they
Yeah.
need to I'm like, oh, like the news. And I need to bring it down and be a little bit more serious.
So the
They
coach
hired
works on your toes.
a voice coach for me for a few years, but I still go up octaves, especially when I'm excited. My voice goes up, right?
Can you give me right
I'm like
now?
many-
Hi, Chloe. Give me on the spot. Here we go.
Alec Baldwin today is facing 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter, but the weapons enhancement charge has been dropped. He still faces upwards of 18 months in prison, but he no longer faces upwards of 5 years.
I feel like I'm watching CNN
I
right
feel like
now.
there should be a teleprompter there, and you're just going, we're locked
what a
in.
pro.
Absolutely
But now that
locked
gives
in.
me concept. Like, I didn't recognize what you meant by like the
Yeah.
lower your voice.
You have to talk slow. I talk fast. I've always been that way. Always been like really excited. But I love breaking news. And that's why I know that I'm in the right industry. Like, back to your question, I will say, because that was a good question,
Yeah.
is that like, when I see a story at 10, the reason I know I'm in the right industry, money aside, all of that, is that at 10 o'clock at night when I'm in my pajamas and all I want to do is watch Netflix, right? Or go watch The Last of Us. If I see a huge story break, I want to do it.
That's all you want.
I want to do it.
Yeah.
And I can't help myself but email everybody. When we had a house fire, and it was the pandemic, and we were moving into our rental house in 2020. And the day that happened, Kobe Bryant died. I don't cover sports. And I saw that the Daily Mail and TMZ had the story from sources, and CNN didn't have it. And I think it was a weekend. And I called down to the desk, and I was like, this Kobe thing, I don't know if it's real or not, but I know some people who knew Kobe and know him. Do you want me to work on it? They're like, sure. I'm the one that confirmed it for the network.
Okay. How do you
I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I can't tell you my sources, but I grew up in Dallas, Texas, down the street from someone who played in the NBA with Kobe.
Okay.
So I reached out to his daughter, and then she got me to the dad.
So, but you're just this whole conversation.
But I can't help myself. I'm a meddler. That's what it is. I'm like, oh, wait,
God.
Bezos. I don't cover business, but I can interview him. They're like, sure, Chloe. Okay, fine. And then they're like, oh, wow, you really got him. And I'm like, I'm going to his house in Washington, D.C. They're like, okay, sure. And I'm really of the attitude that it's like, I hustle. I hustle and I want to own the story. I'm not like elbows up competitive. I'm all about like, let's work to break the story together. Let's do it together. But I'm very much of the mindset that like, you don't have to be a household name to like sit down with a big person. And I love that CNN and places like that embrace people like me. Like, okay, you got it. You secured it. You go do it.
Interesting. So to differentiate yourself in this space, is having that network, is knowing those sources a massive way to differentiate?
And also just having that drive. Like a lot of people just don't want to work. And I don't really think it's like a Gen Z or what is it, like Gen Y? I'm lost now. But like now that I know that we're all like, we're what? Like still millennials, right?
I think so,
yeah. But like at the end of it,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
we're barely millennials.
Yeah, we're hanging
although,
on.
like, yeah,
Right.
we're hanging on. But I think it's just like a lot of people just like, they see a story at 10 o'clock at night and they pretend to not see it.
Huh.
I want to own it, right? So that's the problem though. In my job, it's great that I can't turn it off and like I want to do it and I want to be a part of it.
Okay.
I have FOMO, but then I don't know how to turn it off. So then like self-care, wellness, I have like some immuno problems, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there's a whole part
Takes a
of me
toll.
that's like not being focused on, but I have a lot of billionaires and people that I've interviewed and very successful entrepreneurs because I had a little series for a little bit where I interviewed like famous female entrepreneurs who started these businesses in their homes that became billion-dollar businesses like Kendra Scott, right?
Yep,
And others. And you can't have it all at the same time.
Yeah.
That's what they all say.
You can't have
So there
it all.
might be a Chloe in the future that meditates and does yoga and like looks great in a bikini, but like that season of my life is just not right now. I don't know how to do both.
Interesting. All in. Chloe is an all-in person. I love
On
that.
one thing.
Let me ask you this though. If someone back home is listening and they're wildly intrigued by all the things you're saying about the industry. And they too think like, you know what, when I see a breaking story, I just instantly stop everything I'm doing and I want to read about it and know more. And they have an interest in getting into this industry. Even someone like myself who has a podcast, who's doing like media deals. Yesterday I was filming for a TV show.
Yeah, but
like,
you'd be a great journalist. You kind of are a journalist with what you're doing,
I guess
right?
to like a little bit of a certain extent.
you
I'd say
are.
it's more educational. But to your point, even though you like even that comment, I still would have no idea where to start, how to break into this industry.
There's
So I know
nothing
the
to do other than just like have a drive. Like if you want to do it, it could be me or you calling and getting that person to talk to you and giving you that piece of news, right?
But right now, Susie's in Ohio. She's in Cleveland, Ohio. She's listening to this, wherever you are, Susie. I'm just making you up. And she says, I want to be a journalist, entertainment, CNN. What is her first step? What does she do?
Well, it depends at what point of her life she's at, right?
Okay.
So if she's in college, make sure that you are part of your school's TV station or the school's newspaper, or
Great.
go get an internship just to know what it's like to work in a newsroom, right? Your first step is no wrong step, whether you want to go work in local news because it's easy, right?
Mhm.
Or you know what, like the old days of, oh, you need to go work in 5 different local markets before you go work at ABC News is not true. Go work at ABC News. Go ahead, work there. Obviously, digital is like my background. Go work for abc.com, nbc.com, cnn.com. And I still like write for digital almost every other day, right? So that's so important. And because that's how people are consuming their news mainly, right?
Yeah.
So go and write. But maybe like what area you like. Do you like criminal stuff? Do you like politics? Do you like entertainment? Do you like health and wellness? Like, what do you want to write about? Start writing about it, right? And then, if you see a big story, like make a call on it. Because who's to say that like, oh, Jason Tartick could have gotten Bezos over me because maybe you called first or maybe you had that connection over me.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing too in 2023 with all the different forums that are out there and platforms, you could, if you want to do it, start doing it. If you break a story right now without a network behind you, these days, especially with TikTok and virality, you can become TikTok. You can literally become your own. Yeah, we're old.
We sound like my mom.
Yeah, these TikTok days.
You took the words out of my mouth because
I can do it now.
I get a lot of my breaking news from TikTok, and there's different, like whether it's people in the reality TV world that have huge TikTok followings because they're the news source there. So just to your point, and if you said people are looking to hire, networks are looking to hire people with big social followings too, like that's a way the little Susie can start too. Just thinking of like, I know we're millennials, but the Gen X's and Y's and Z's that we're talking about, that's a way to start too. But I feel like that's almost a prerequisite to do while you're at school now too. Like if you're going to Auburn University for journalism, they're probably telling you like, hey, a social Or Eagle. Build a social following on the side. Like that's just the world that we live in now.
And I think the only tell me this though, the only shortcut to the top then is it having social media following. How do you shortcut this industry?
I mean, yeah, it's become a really famous reality star, to be totally honest with you. And then if you're not too polarizing and you have a massive following, you can do a lot of things. I mean, I think the list goes on and on of all of these people who've been on the Bachelor franchise, right? Who have parlayed that into lucrative deals, but not just, side hustles and businesses from wine to you name it, but like, going and getting, I mean, look, Caitlyn won Dancing with the Stars. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that.
Yeah.
Right? She could go to ABC and say, I want to be a correspondent for GMA. And they're going to probably take it really seriously because she has a huge following. Yeah. She's good on camera and people like her, right? Yeah. So that's how she bypasses somebody like me that's been trying to do it for 10 years.
Or like I think about
Michael
Strahan. I think about Rachel Lindsay. Rachel Lindsay was a bachelorette. She's now like the head person with Billy Bush at Extra TV.
Right.
So I see, okay, interesting. This industry is
but it's not easy. As
you
know, you can go sign up for a reality show and it's like how many people, I use Caitlyn as an example, but how many people become Caitlyn? It's not that.
It's 1%.
It's not easy.
It's 1%. Yeah. It's
right?
Absolutely 1%. Okay, let me ask you this.
But I'm not saying go become a reality star so that you can go become a journalist. Correct. Don't do that.
Yeah. You're just
saying, if you have goals to be like a host, which is a totally different thing, and people get really confused by that.
Yeah.
When you're studying journalism at school, are you specializing in school? Are you just getting your journalism degree and having a passion and going for that? Like, I didn't even know or really think that CNN, I assume it with like news and politics, you obviously cover entertainment, events, celebrities. Like, did you know that that was under CNN's umbrella, like
No.
before you worked there? Like, how did that come to be?
And the second question to that is, do you have to niche down?
Right.
Like, did you have to decide you're going to be in entertainment, or do you not have to do that?
Didn't know. I did not know. So I thought I was going to be, believe it or not, Christian Amanpour in the Middle East and like learning
Wow.
Arabic. And that's what I thought. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
going to be an international correspondent, be on the front lines of war. I don't know why, but that's just like what I thought when I was like in high school and then in college. Not that I was like some super serious, still where I partied in college. I did not specialize in anything. I'm not really sure what I really learned in the classroom. Everything that I learned was in the school's TV station,
Mhm.
how to use a camera, how to put together a news story, getting comfortable on TV. But really the first things I learned was my first job after interning for Stephen Colbert at the Colbert Report at Comedy Central for the summer. I got a job at CNN as a news assistant. How did I get that job? I called my neighbor in Atlanta. I opened up the directory. Remember back in
Of
the day,
course.
you had
Yeah.
a directory.
Directories, yeah.
And it had like your neighbors, you
Yeah,
know?
of
And
course.
so, or like it would be like X'd out because like their number changed, right?
Yeah.
But I called Gary Tuckman, who was like a famous CNN anchor and correspondent. And I left him a voicemail. I was like, you don't know me. I'm your neighbor. And I really need a job. And I want to stay in New York. Can you introduce me to anybody? And I somehow, by the skin of my teeth, got a job as a news assistant among all these Ivy League grads who probably did specialize or know what they wanted to cover or knew that they wanted to do politics, and which is why they wanted to work at CNN. I just really knew CNN from growing up in like Atlanta,
Yeah.
right? And like it's almost feels like your hometown like news network,
Sure.
although it's national, right?
Yeah.
But like, you know, Atlanta, CNN, Delta, Coca-Cola, it's like all
Yeah,
your
course.
besties.
Yeah.
And I worked there, and it was 2009. It was the year of Bernie Madoff. It was the year of the banks collapsing. Worst time to get a job. Thank God I got a job. And I was like, I hate this. It's depressing, and I don't want to cover any of this.
Yeah.
So I was like dating a guy who worked at Sirius XM. I won't say his name here, but it was an awful relationship, but we dated for a few years. He went on to like date Stassi.
Oh, wow.
Stassi Schroeder, you know her?
Of course.
And she, again, talk about a reality star who parlayed and very successful and business savvy, what she did. And he had an entertainment show for Cosmo Radio on Sirius XM. And we were dating, and I would go in studio and listen to him on the radio. And I was like, I want to interview celebrities and do this. It'd be so much fun. So I went and worked for HollywoodLife.com. It had just started. And I worked there for 7 years.
Wow. I love that you were.
And I was doing straight up gossip. Like,
yeah, that's blocking and tackling. You're calling the director. You're going to Hollywood Life. You're doing like VH1. You're taking CNN assistant jobs. You weren't doing what those individuals at the Ivy League and getting right to the top were. Did you ever at any moment feel like, you know, and then you're talking about interviewing Jeff Bezos and all these big people. Do you
it
ever
took a
deal
long
with
time.
imposter syndrome? And what advice do you have back to Susie in Cleveland, Ohio, who deals with imposter syndrome?
what show is that? Where like it's like, hi Susie.
Yeah.
What's your question?
Susie, we need you to come on the
like
show.
Delilah, remember that?
Delilah.
Delilah. So I still have imposter syndrome today. Going from the South to Yankee Land, as my deep Southern Fox News watching family says, and fine, you know, they were like, why would you want to go to New York? Don't you want to stay down south? Why can't you work at CNN in Atlanta? Why do you have to go to New York? And I was like, I want to go to the big city, Sex and the City, Gossip Girl. Like, I want to go up there. And as soon as I started working at CNN, I felt so dumb. And I felt just nobody knew what Auburn was, even though I think we'd won a national championship at that point. But still,
That's
people
cool.
didn't know where Auburn was. They're
Cam
like,
Newton.
is that a private school?
2010, I
People
think.
used to ask me.
Oh, really?
Well, I was graduated
that's just-
2008.
That's the most New York shit in the world.
Yeah.
Not knowing what the SEC,
Auburn,
the
New York.
Cam Newton. Like, how do
Scary.
people not? That's so New York City.
So
New York.
I always felt like I had to sort of explain why I deserved a seat at the table and why I was there. And then I went to go cover entertainment, you know, for 7 years. worked for a really tough editor named Bonnie Fuller, who had run American Media. She'd been the editor of Glamour. Mary Claire started Us Weekly, then went to Star Magazine. And then Jay Penske of Penske Oil, Penske Racing, he decides to start Penske Media Corporation. And he bought Deadline, and then he bought the URL HollywoodLife.com and put Bonnie in charge. I was her first hire. And so I ended up working for her for 7 years, got this TV show on VH1, had imposter syndrome the whole time. And then when I went to CNN after 7 years being gone, I had so much more imposter syndrome because I'm like, oh my God, I did it again. How did I get here? Everybody has like a master's degree from an Ivy League school. They're talking about politics. And I'm like, you know, Trump's going to win the election. They're like, what? And then he did. And I was so happy. Well, not happy that he won, but like happy.
You were
like,
right.
I told you.
Yeah.
It's a huge country. And there's a lot of people in the middle of the country that are going to vote for him.
And I lived there.
And I lived there. I know what I'm talking about. I don't think imposter syndrome ever really has gone away. But everybody is just a person. Everybody's trying as hard as they can. And, you know, I've just kind of... I have a lot of people around me that make me a better writer, that make me a better reporter. I'm still figuring it all out. But, you know, I think that the things that are most important is that if you work really hard and you try, it sounds really silly, like the things that your parents told you. But, what are those things that you see it on Instagram, right? And it's like, what are the things that you need to be successful? It's like show up on time, dress for the job that you want, be kind, ask questions, be prepared, and, be ready to learn, right? So it's like, I don't really care if you have an Ivy League degree or what you think that you've done. I think that I really think the playing field is pretty even.
That stuff doesn't define you.
No.
And I even, you said
also,
over-prepare.
nobody ever in a job interview has asked me, sorry, listen to this, Susie. No one's ever asked me my GPA. No one's ever asked me what clubs I was in college. No one ever asked me where I went to college. It's never come up in any interview, in any conversation. No one cares. So
I love that.
but nobody cares.
Yeah. I mean, you're bang on.
Specific for my industry. I'm not saying that it doesn't matter where you went to medical school or where you went to law school necessarily.
But this is specific to your industry.
This is specific to my industry.
Okay, I got one more question.
I did get rejected from Columbia University for a master's degree, and then they had me come and teach a class years later on investigative journalism.
Look at you now. Let's go.
Like Elwood's.
Elwood's story right there. All right, here's what I wanted to ask you too, is when you look at this industry and you look at some of the greats, the Anderson Coopers, the Barbara Walters, RIP, the Diane Sawyers, just some of the people that are the best, the Hall of Fame mantle in this world. What differentiates them from everyone else within this industry? When you look at like skill sets that you want to recreate or you want to copy that they do, what is it that they have?
Honestly, and first of all, Anderson Cooper, nicest person. I anchored with him for 4 hours with almost no commercial breaks by accident.
Wow.
Like 2 years ago when New York City had a COVID concert, like New York City's back and all these celebrities in Central Park. And then like 30 minutes in, it got rained out, but we didn't know if it's rained out or not because they hadn't called it. So he and I happened to be in the studio, so they threw me on the air with him. I'd never met him before, and I was on the air for 4 hours, and literally like Stephen Colbert, wow, full circle, and all these people were calling in live. It's like some of the greatest television, I've been told. So if you go and you YouTube it, it's wild, and we had the best time.
Talk about a pressure cooker.
He was the nicest person.
Talk about imposter syndrome.
He shook my hand afterwards. He was like, good job. Not many people would have been able to like do what you just did, and that felt really good. What do I need to work on, and what's really hard to do? It's the art of the interview.
Huh. Because you, especially in your world,
the art of the interview is hard.
But on podcasting, it's you got time, you got effort. We can edit this, we can cut it up. In the TV world, what I don't like, especially when I'm not doing anything live, is you have 5 seconds. You have 7 seconds. You will get cut off. They're in your ear, like, all right, wrap it up. So getting a good clip in a 30-second time period is close to impossible.
But so that's true. But also, like Jeff Bezos, when I sat down with him, his first interview in 4 years, I did it a few months ago at his home in Washington, D.C., 40,000 square feet, the amount of, security to get into his home. They taped my phone's camera, all this stuff, right? And I'm sitting there. It's I don't know how anybody couldn't get nervous. Okay.
How could you not?
I don't know how you couldn't. And I walked away from that being like, I don't ever want to be that rich. Not that I'm going to have that as an option.
Yeah.
But
No, it's like, that's too much.
I just want like 1 billion.
Yes,
I don't need like
yes.
140
Yeah.
million. But it's the art of the interview. It's sitting there, keeping your thoughts together. And how do you go from like the first question, get to your goals, keep them interested. And like, it's like, you're not, if you can write out 10 questions for someone, you're probably not going to go from 1 to 10. You're going to go from here, make sure to be like listening to them, to ask a follow-up question, but know where you want to go next. If they don't want to answer that question, try to like decide in the moment, like, do you push on it? Do you just go to the next question? It's really stressful. So like the Christian Amanpours, the Anderson Coopers, the Gail Kings, the Diane Sawyers, I would love to sit down with them, Oprah, and ask them how, like, what is the art of the interview for you? How do you decide how to take it where you want to go? Because you probably sit down and you know that you want to ask like 1 or 2 big questions that are going to make news. And it's like the whole reason usually why you're sitting down with them. Like, did you do it?
Yeah,
You know?
of course. Yeah.
But it's like you can't like go in guns blazing.
Yeah.
But then again, like when you watch some of these Barbara Walters interviews, maybe because she was a household name at that point or she had nothing to lose, she goes in and she just like asks.
She fires away.
Trump, like, are you racist? Or what was that she asked him,
just
right?
came
I think,
yeah.
right? She just come out and ask.
Right. I mean, there's something about, I think, maybe the emotional intelligence and the energy, because as you know, whether it's Jeff Bezos or it's Kourtney Kardashian, it's the energy and it's the person, and they then have to change their entire energy to get the answers for these very tough questions, but then present them in a way that these people feel comfortable.
Well, and also it might be a question that like Jeff Bezos or someone wants to answer, but his team might not.
Right.
So you also have to remember that like you're sitting there and like there's people behind the cameras watching you. It's like your producer, your, you know, their assistants, their team, their management are there, and they're like, don't say it, stop.
Don't fall for the trap.
You know, right? So like that's hard. And you have to like block it all out, right?
Yeah.
So it's interviews are stressful.
Okay, I just love this industry. I get interviewed for another hour on it. I'm going to wrap with this question, Dave. I'll give you one more because I've already said last question a couple times, but I got to ask this one. Chloe, you go to your annual review, and they're starting to determine what is success for Chloe in the past year to determine a raise or your next step. In an annual basis, what do you have to do to meet expectations in the world of their eyes? But how do they measure that?
That's subjective.
Don't miss a story.
Okay.
Break news. What does that even mean? I don't know. I still don't know. Like, what does break news mean? Does break news mean like sit down with a big newsmaker? Does break news mean my story in which Kanye was going to name his album Hitler that I almost broke the internet with when I broke that story a few months ago? Does break news mean, you know, find out what's going on with Priscilla Presley's estate? I think it's all of it. I think it's just having scoops and news and knowing when Alec Baldwin's team's going to file this and that. Like, you know, I think it's just like staying on your beats and you know, I mean, look, obviously like breaking a big story that so-and-so's going to divorce with this person, or, you know, like I knew that Ryan Seacrest was going to step down from Live with Kelly the other day before he announced it.
Okay.
But we didn't break it because like we were the people who told us, we're like, don't break it. You know, so we like waited and then like it came out, right? But you gotta like pick your battles too. And we're CNN, so we're not gonna like burn sources.
So are you sitting with CNN at your annual review, giving them a resume of all the news stories you broke?
Oh, do I write down all the stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to. You have to advocate for yourself. I don't know if everybody does that, but I go in with a list of my greatest hits.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's what your annual review is like.
Yeah.
You're going over what you're breaking.
Yes. Yes, I am.
And what's the next move for Chloe?
I am, you know, want to stay in journalism.
Okay.
I have, you know, being a mom now, I have like a lot of ideas, you know, for other things. You know, I'm 36. I feel like a relic, maybe because I'm tired because I don't sleep. You'll see when you have kids. You'll see.
He's got one coming. That's what we're doing the bachelor party.
Enjoy it while you
That's
can.
what I've heard. Yep.
There's no more like you're watching Netflix for like 10 minutes and then you hear a baby cry.
Yeah.
So
there we go.
Actually, I hear babies cry in TV shows, and then my heart like stops because I think it's like mine, and then I'm like, oh good, it's not mine. It's show. But it's like triggers you.
Okay.
Well, I got one question before we go to the book, because I want to get into the book. You keep saying sources, and my mind always goes to who are these people, and in the world of like clout and like want to get noticed and notoriety and money and people trying to sell stories or sell leads, the who are these people that are giving you sources?
That name bothers you. That bothers you, right?
Yeah, well,
I
I'm
get
just
it.
like, okay, you hear source, it's like, are these people getting paid for their sources?
Right.
And why are they not putting their name to it and wanting credit for it? Because everyone's trying to bolster their own career.
Okay, so at every outlet, a source is like a different thing. Some
Okay.
outlets, I'm sure, do pay for people to talk,
Okay.
right? We don't.
Okay.
And most reputable news organizations do not pay. Most reputable news organizations don't pay for sources, right?
Yeah.
I've heard of like paying for photographs and things like that. A lot of times well, first of all, we have like a whole like legal process at CNN to like vet that. So it's really hard to get an anonymous source on CNN. And I would assume the same is for the New York Times and other places, right? Why do people not want to put their names? Because they might be in fear of losing their job. They might be speaking out against a boss or a powerful figure. They might be worried about being sued. Might be someone who signed an NDA or someone who has something, you know, or non-disparagement clause. You know, there's a lot of different reasons why someone might not want to speak out, or they're just scared. Scared in general, scared of the backlash, scared of their family knowing, or what is their family going to think, or what are their friends going to think. So there's a lot of different reasons why, but to your point, at least where I work and what I do, you have to have a really good reason why you want to be anonymous. And then I have to explain those reasons to everyone about what those reasons are. And then we have to decide if their reasons meet our bar for anonymity.
Okay. That makes sense.
I think that makes a lot of sense. With the transparency right now of TikTok and social media with journalism, just people having a lot of backlash with media, has that impacted just your outlook on if you want to be in the industry or if you want to grow within it, or how do you push back to those
I think what's
individuals?
interesting for me is growing up in the South and having, it's at least for a while, maybe less so now, but it still felt for a while so polarized, so divided on so many issues. It's like, you know, conservative media versus liberal media. Nobody trusts anybody. So I think that now people get their news from so many different places. It's not just like the old school days where it's like you read one paper or you watch one television show or one news anchor. People are like flipping constantly. So at least in my world, a lot of people are getting news from like a lot of different places. It's hard. There's a lot of disinformation out there.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Well, we talked about what's next for you, and we know what is next this week. We don't know what's next in a couple of years from now, but we'll all be watching. And this week, you have finally got this book across the finish line, Luck of the Draw. This has been a hard, hustling project of yours. Your grandfather wrote this book. You guys self-published it, and it was you and your mother that did this. This is a whole new career journey for you. So what can you tell us about Luck of the Draw?
So this has been years in the making. Thank you for bringing it up. So my grandfather was a prisoner of war for almost 2 years in World War II. Same prison camp as The Great Escape. He was a navigator of a B-17. So before there was GPS, there were guys in the front with maps and tools and got to keep their cool while there's like literally firefights all around you. And my grandfather entered the war after Pearl Harbor, grew up in Atlanta, was going to school at Emory University. And, you know, he knew he was either going to be drafted or he would try to enlist himself. And he did. He enlisted. He wanted to be a pilot, but he didn't have great eyesight. So he became a navigator. There was a real need for navigators. He flew 21 missions out of England. 25 is the required. He was just a few missions short of finishing and being able to go home. On his 21st mission, he was shot down over Munster, Germany, captured by the Nazis and thrown into Stalag Luft 3, where the Great Escape happened. And he was there when the Great Escape happened. If you don't know what the Great Escape was, it was immortalized in a movie starring Steve McQueen about these guys who tunneled out these British troops, and Hitler ordered them, once they were captured, to be killed. And it was like a violation of the Geneva Convention. My grandfather, too, tried to tunnel out and luckily wasn't successful. And so my mom and I in our family, you know, Grandpa had written this book 20 years ago. He wrote it like 6 years before he died. He wrote it in 2001, and he published it just for the family. And it was just something he wanted to do, a project after retirement. And he started it in his like late 70s, and he worked on it for like 7-8 years, a crazy amount of research. My grandfather ended up being a lawyer, and he actually worked with planes his whole life, doing contracts for the royal family in Saudi Arabia for Lockheed Martin, had this like crazy life. But he wrote this book, and here it is. So my mom and I decided that we wanted to publish it with like a big time publisher.
Okay.
So we partnered with St. Martin's Press.
Amazing.
And so it's coming out. And we wrote the foreword, which is like crazy.
It's amazing that you guys did all that. And then I think one of the biggest things here is that his story will be featured on Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg's Apple series Masters of the Air. How do Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg come across this?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally crazy. So I just like want to like grab the book.
Grab
it. So yeah, I feel like I can't like talk about
It's
it
your
without
baby.
touching it. So yeah, you get it, right?
Yeah.
So basically, the story goes is that in the early 2000s, when my grandfather wrote the book, someone at Tom Hanks's production company got their hands on a copy of my grandfather's book. But what's interesting is that he self-published it. He wasn't like out selling this places, but he had copies and he was passing them to people. He was speaking at different World War II events and organizations, like the 100th Bomb Group Foundation and stuff like that. They do these reunions, and I actually go to them every year now. And somehow it got into the hands of somebody, so we know that it got into those circles then, but it wasn't necessarily for masters. Several years later, in 2007, a man named Don Miller, who's a famous historian, he wrote a book called Masters of the Air. Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg optioned that book. Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg have been trying since 2007 to create this TV show about the air war over Europe. And it's really expensive.
Yeah.
And so it's really
imagine.
hard to do. And it was supposed to be with HBO, which is where they did a show called Band of Brothers.
Yep.
And they did The Pacific. And HBO passed. And reportedly it's because it was going to cost too much money, like hundreds of millions of dollars to do. So Apple TV came along, and they scooped it up. And over the years, I got to know the writers and the different people who were working on Masters of the Air. And one day, I'm at one of these World War II reunions, and one of the writers is like, you know, your grandfather's a character. I'm like, what? I'm like, really? I was like, I was hoping so, but I was never going to ask you.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like CNN reporter, or like I'm at these events, and I just want to be treated like any other granddaughter. So I'm not asking them any Hollywood stuff.
Right.
And when they told me, I was like, oh my God, this is so crazy. I can't wait to tell my grandma and my mom. And then we went to the set in England during the pandemic. Went with like a lot of my family.
Wow.
It was in northern England. The sets are so big. They're like an hour apart. Stars Austin Butler and Jude Law's son, Rafferty Law, and the guy who plays my grandfather's name's Jonas Moore. He's like a newcomer out of England. He actually is the narrator of the audiobook, which is my idea.
So
he does a great
cool.
Southern accent. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So I was like, hey guys, we need to publish this book so that it comes out around the time of the series. And we also need to use the money that the book makes to raise money for World War II organizations. So all the money from the book goes to 2 different World War II organizations.
That is amazing. Luck of the draw. I also want to connect this book to our listenership. And so I think about where our generation is at, right? With the tic-tac, with the social media, with the constant focus of growing followers and just doing things for themselves in different ways versus this generation, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. A prisoner of war shot down during World War II. You think about the trials and tribulations versus today, and it's really hard to connect the different generations. Based on your grandfather's story and this book, what are some big takeaways that Gen Zs and millennials can have as they're kind of trying to navigate through the different waters of 2023, that they can learn from what your grandfather did and how he got through these struggles and how he got through being a prisoner of war and how he became as successful as he did? What lessons, like big takeaways, do you think they could take away from him?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's no social media, there's no cell phones, there's no internet, there's no computers. Like there's telegrams. right? And so I think there was just a lot of national pride, and people wanted to serve for their country, and you felt this duty. And, these guys are young. Tom Hanks says on the cover of this book, he says at the end of his quote, how did those boys do such things? They were like 18, 19 years old.
That gave me goosebumps.
Like
right
no training. They're going up day after day after day in these like tin can airplanes, being shot at, like literally picked off in the sky because these are daylight bombing missions. This is in the middle of the day, clear, sunny skies. You're not flying when it's like overcast and raining. And these guys are being shot down and thousands of them are dying, right? And my grandfather, the day that his plane was shot down, 2 men died. That's like 2 generations of people that don't exist. I like explained to my 5-year-old, like if Grandpa Murphy died, because they talk about him like they met him and they didn't. I'm like, if Grandpa Murphy died, like we wouldn't be here. Like how crazy is that? Like it's totally mind-boggling. So it's like, I want to like talk about this. It's resilience. It's the will to live. Like, sure, I mean, there could be worse things, but it puts things into perspective in your own life, right? Like I had a house fire, I felt more resilient when I like thought about my grandfather's story. It doesn't take away your own pain. Everything is like, I'm not trying to like diminish anybody else's problems, right? Like if you're upset that like you're in traffic one day, like that's it makes you miss something. That's your own thing, right? But being a prisoner of war and having lice and pneumonia and no warm food, eating gross bread, maybe soup if you're lucky, you have lice and you have no blankets at night. And this is for like almost 2 years. I mean, you could just give up. My grandfather writes in the book about how they actually transferred them from one prison camp to another one right at the end of the war. And the Germans knew that like, the war was going to be over. Had to march for days in the snow in sub-zero temperatures, like not the right clothing, holes in their shoes. And my grandfather writes about how men were just passing out in the snow, how they begged with each other to keep going. They carried each other on each other's backs through the snow that's like up to your like calves. And they were thrown in a boxcar. My kids call them box trains, but they boxcar for like 3 days and 3 nights. Look, I mean, like obviously like the Holocaust prison camps and, these extermination camps, like that is torture. That is horror. But what my grandfather went through was terrible, right? And in the title of his book, Luck of the Draw, I mean, like, it was just, he said, like, a bullet had your name on it, right?
It's crazy.
It's just so crazy.
What advice do you think?
And he didn't talk about it for like decades. So I think he probably had post-traumatic stress, but.
I'm sure he did. But what advice do you think if he was looking at his great-grandkids and he could give one piece of advice, seeing what the world looked like today, what piece of advice do you think he'd give him?
I mean, my grandfather was the calmest, most even-tempered person. He never raised his voice. He was the person, he had 4 kids. He had lots of grandkids, has lots of grandkids, and now great-grandkids. And, nothing ever bothered him. I think that, like, can't ask him, but we assume in the family, because we talk about it now, that being a prisoner of war and all these insane experiences that he went through and being shot at and watching people die all around him kind of put life into perspective. Yeah. So I think that like easier said than done, but try to put things into perspective because like it could always be worse. And that's what I always try to remind myself. Isn't there a saying that like if there was a jar, didn't Warren Buffett say it or somebody said it, like if you had to like put your hand in a jar and pick out like 3 marbles with 3 different like life options for you, would you like go in there and do that? I'm butchering this, but like would you do that or would you like keep your own life? And I think most of us would probably keep our own lives and not gamble to have something else.
Yeah, luck of the draw. I think that's a great trading secret from your grandfather. Now I got to transition to your trading secret. So what was one piece of advice from you, Chloe, whether it is aligned with the book Luck of the Draw or it's just your entire career track? What is one trading secret you would give to our listeners, the Money Mafia, and specifically probably Susie in Cleveland, Ohio?
I have it.
Yes, you're dancing over there.
I've had it. Stephen Colbert told me.
Okay.
Isn't that, I can just name drop Stephen
Yeah.
Colbert
Yeah,
right
your
there.
network is
Look
fucking
at that.
nuts. It's
I
fucking
don't
crazy.
think he even knows
It's like
me.
Jeff Bezos.
No,
yeah,
I-
We're
did a
gonna have to
segment with
We're
Anderson.
gonna have to place a
Meanwhile-
clip that's just her name drop.
Meanwhile, you like run into them and you're like, oh yeah, Chloe. And they're like, who? What? Who is she? Oh, right. That girl. That girl. The harder I work, the luckier I get.
Mm.
Hell to the yeah.
Yeah.
I work so hard and then not all doors, but doors open. I have never been somebody who just gets a phone call. It's like, hey, great opportunity. Do you want this? It's going to pay you a lot of money. Or, hey, you want to, not work as hard and, what is the saying? Like, work smarter, not harder.
Sure.
I haven't really figured that out yet.
Mhm.
I think that's cool. I'd like to aspire to that
Yeah.
and come back and tell you that that's what my mantra is. But no, it's really the harder I work, the luckier I get. Go for it. Go do it. Try. Keep going. Pick yourself up. Middle finger to the haters. Like, just keep going. You'll figure it out, But just, I thought that was really profound, and that has stuck with me since I was 22.
The harder you work, the luckier you get. And also, I'm looking at the title of the book, Luck of the Draw. There's a lot of connection there.
Look at that.
And to think about where you've come from and what you've done and how you've done it
The
and working
depths
on
of
your
the
voice,
South.
the depths of the south of Auburn, all the way to the big city of New York. Chloe, it
I'm
is
like
amazing.
Fievel.
I could do like 4-part series. I'm so curious of your industry. Before I wrap up, David, Curious Canadian?
No, your grandfather must be smiling down
Yeah.
that you've
Aw.
done this. And
That's
something
sweet.
about books brings this group together, from your book launch and the CNN interview you did when we met Chloe the first time to this. Has been a pleasure.
It's great. And Jason, promise me that when you are an anchor
Yeah.
of some big newscast, you'll have me on.
Deal.
Okay,
Deal. And when
good.
I publish my second book, you got to have me
I
on.
will.
All right.
I've
I
already
love it.
committed.
We
Okay.
got a deal. Where can people buy Luck of the Draw, Chloe?
Everywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target. You can also go to luckofthedraw.us, and it has all the info there.
luckofthedraw.us. Guys, we are going to buy 5 books. We are going to give them away to 5 listeners. What you got to do, just give us a review what you thought of this episode. Give us 5 stars. Put your Instagram handle. 5 books will be purchased. We will give them away to the first 5 people that do it. And Chloe, where can people find you when they want to search you and learn more from you and have more questions for you?
Thank you. That was so sweet.
Oh, of course.
I loved
yes.
that like surprise at the end.
Yeah,
You're
nice
like
little
Oprah.
touch there.
You get a card.
You
get a card.
one. You get one.
Help me get more followers on
Okay,
Instagram
I love that.
at Chloe Melas.
All right.
Follow me there.
At Chloe Melas. What we would like from you guys is a review. What Chloe would like is a follower. Books are going to be given out. Chloe, thank you so much for being on this episode of Trading Secrets.
Thank you.